They said my dad is a spy. He is a spy for Chinese government.
Hello and welcome to Holding Heritage. This is a space to explore and have honest conversations around the Asian North American experience. We'll focus on Canadian refugee stories, family, heritage, and bridging generational gaps. My name is Holly. Thank you so much for joining me. Hello and welcome back to another Exploring Roots episode where we focus on real refugee, immigrant, and childhood storytelling directly from refugees and immigrants themselves. This episode is part 2 of a 3-part series with Sinh Ha, my dad. And in part 1, we explored what it was like for my dad growing up as a young boy in North Vietnam. And in today's episode, you'll hear about how and why my grandfather and eldest uncle were put in jail, and my dad's memories and experiences around these events leading up to their boat journey to Hong Kong. So let's dive in and pick up right where we left off. Reminder that the time period and place we're talking about right now is around the late 70s in North Vietnam. Tensions between China and Vietnam were increasing, and because of this, many residents like my grandfather and uncle who were of ethnic Chinese background were being singled out and persecuted.
And then my dad got put in prison because he listened to the news.
Because you guys had a radio, right?
Yeah, my dad got a radio at home, which they don't allow any resident listen to world news. BBC News is world news, which they don't allow you to listen to. Mm-hmm. But because my dad want to know all the situation with China and want to know what's going on, so in case if we have to leave, we know what to do and where to go. Mm-hmm. So every night my dad and 2 of his friends, also Chinese, they come to our house and they listen to the news. Mm-hmm. But one of his friends go to the police and tell the police that my dad listened to the news.
Why would he do that? Because he was also listening to it. And he's also Chinese.
Yes, he's Chinese. He's half Chinese.
Half Vietnamese.
Yeah, later on we find out he's only half. And one of his parents is Chinese and one of his parents is Vietnamese. Mm-hmm. So I guess he don't want to go back to China. He think if he do something,
then they'll let him stay.
Then the Vietnamese government will let him stay. So he go to the police and say that.
So this type of thing that happened to my grandfather was unfortunately fairly common at the time. Some, in a panic, would choose to abandon, betray, or completely isolate themselves from Chinese families in fear that the government might think that they were helping them and in turn suffer the consequences. So this man that betrayed my grandpa ended up on the quote-unquote good side of the Vietnamese government after reporting them and did not have to flee or leave Vietnam at all as a result.
So my dad and one of his friend got put in jail, and he don't have to go to jail. So after my dad go to jail, that's very, very hard at home. My mom, she don't know anything. She don't read and write. Mm-hmm. Normally, all she knows is just work, and my dad take care of all the paperwork and everything else.
So Yaya can read and write?
He don't go to school, but he learn by himself. Wow. At home. So he can read and he can write, but not very good. But at least he can do the stuff he need to do, right? And my oldest brother not at home because he have to join the army. So the second one and my older sister and my uncle, the youngest uncle, work at home. So after my dad go to prison, then my mom have to take over everything because my dad never think that he have to go to prison, so he don't prepare anything. He don't teach anybody to do what he have to do. So when the police come to the house and just take him, at first they said, well, they have some question. They said, just come to the station. So nobody think anything. We didn't even know that guy go to the police, right? I don't think my dad know too. So my dad, follow them to the police station. He ride his bicycle out there.
So that day that my grandfather left on his bike down to the police station for questioning, he had no idea what his so-called friend had done. And in Vietnam at this time, the government provided little to zero information or updates to residents, especially matters that involved the persecution of Chinese families. So that evening around 8 or 9 p.m., when my grandpa didn't come home, my grandma had a sense of what might have happened. My dad told me that there was one Vietnamese officer that was a sort of friend of my grandfather's, and that night he made his way to their house, something that was definitely not protocol, but perhaps out of respect for my grandfather and his family, he announced to them officially that he wasn't going to be coming home.
So he come and he tell my mom, say,
I see my dad suddenly hit with emotion. Like I could see a memory flash into his mind, one that he hadn't thought about for a long, long time.
That must have been so hard.
Yeah, well, they don't have to tell you anything. If you want to know, you go to the station and ask. Even you ask, they don't tell you the truth, right?
So after my grandpa, Ye, was put in jail, it left my grandma, Mama, alone with having to take care of all the kids, step up and learn the ropes of running the noodle process, work on figuring out this whole situation with the prison, and keep up with the increasing tensions and dangers between China and Vietnam. Back then, my dad tells me that the first few months Ye was in jail, they wouldn't disclose where or why they were keeping him. Visiting or even requesting a visit was not an easy task. In order to do anything at all, inside connections needed to be made, bribes arranged and paid, and careful planning along every step of the way.
So it's very hard for my mom. She have to worry about my dad and then have to take care of the business at home and then have to worry about what's going on with Chinese people because every week, sometimes every day, they have people come to your house and just ask you to leave, to go. Then my mom said, well, my husband's still in prison. How can we go?
While all this was going on, my dad's eldest brother, my uncle, in his 20s at the time, was serving in the army. Before any conflicts between China and Vietnam, he held a pretty good position as a military trainer. He wasn't sent into any battlefields because he was training soldiers how to use weapons. However, once tensions began to build, there was a shift in the way he was treated and seen.
Then suddenly, they don't allow him to do anything. They don't talk to him, they don't allow him in meeting, and then his friends just try to avoid him, don't talk to him, and treat him really, really bad.
My dad says that it got to a point where my uncle could not stand being in the army anymore. He did what was considered a criminal offense and left the army to go back home.
So after he got home, just about 2 days, the police and the army soldiers from the army was come to the house and take him away.
Because they were like, you left the army.
Yeah, you left the army, right? So, that is a no-no. Right? Even though they treat you bad, you can't go home, right? So they come and get him and put him in jail. So at that time, my dad in jail, he's in jail. So more pressures for my mom. And then there's a lot of things to worry about at home. You still have to work at home and also worry about my second brother because he's old. I think he's 17 or 18 that time. He was afraid they will take him and put him in jail too because any older than 16 and boy is dangerous to the government, right? So they might.
Since my grandpa and uncle were then in prison at the same time, I asked my dad if they maybe had been held in the same place.
Were they in the same prison? Like, did they see each other?
Well, believe it or not, at the start, they are in the same camp and they don't even know. Because my dad go to prison first, right?
Oh, and so he wouldn't know.
So he didn't even know my brothers go home and then got put in prison. So there's one day they find out. I don't know how they find out, but my older brother told me in that prison, their cell is really close to each other. He said like 3 or 4 cell away. And then on those cells, there is a pipe, like water pipe or air pipe or whatever.
Yeah.
So if you talk to each other
through the pipe.
And he said, my older brother said this one day, somehow I think there's people know and tell him.
Like your dad's over there.
Yeah, your dad is where, and then he talked to my dad, and that's how my dad found out.
Wow.
Yeah, I forgot about that too. Yeah.
So for context going into this next story, like my dad mentioned before, at this time, if you were ethnic Chinese, male, and above the age of around 16, you were very likely seen as a potential threat because a common accusation then was that you could be a spy or an informant for China. So my dad, on the other hand, being around 12 years old, wasn't seen as much of a threat. Because of this, though, a lot of responsibilities did fall on him to gather information, to run certain errands, ask riskier questions, etc., etc. So in this next story, you'll hear about one very important and emotional experience my dad went through as a young boy, chosen to do so because of this very reason.
I remember the day my dad go to court. Well, I mean, it doesn't make any difference at that time. They don't allow you to have your own lawyer. So what's that day the court gonna do, right? But I remember the day my dad go to court. Nobody want to come near. Even my uncle, my brothers. Because if they go to court, they were afraid they might get into trouble, and the priest might say, "Oh, you are family, you are the same, you're in the group or whatever." Right? At that time, they said my dad is a spy. He is a spy for Chinese government. That's the charge. So the day the priest come to the house to pick him up, he ride a bicycle with him, right? So that means he have a bicycle in the station somewhere. So I have to go. The reason for me to go is that at least there's one people in the court, right? And then after the court, if he guilty, of course everybody knows he's guilty. They're not gonna release him, right? So hopefully after that, then I can take the bicycle home. But for me, I was so little, I know nothing. I don't know. I never been to a court. I don't know what this court is.
You're like 12, right?
Yeah, I'm 12. They tell me where the court is, and the court is very close to the police station, and which I know the police station close to the football stadium. So I know. So yeah, I find the court and I go there. And it's very scary. So at time, always scared. People tease you and this and that, right? So for me to go into a court is just scary, something new. And I find the court and I go inside the court. There's police there, no other people. Nobody will go there. So unless you have to, right? In the court, there's also wood benches, long benches. Right? So I sat at the end of the court alone, and they all look at me, and I think they know who I am. I think the policeman that know our family,
the friend that told you,
tell them that I'm gonna be there, pick up his belonging or whatever. So, but I have no idea, so I go in there and sit there. And there's 2 lawyers. One lawyer for the government and one lawyer you said for our family, for my dad, right? But they don't do anything. They don't fight for him. It's just something they have to have, I guess. And it won't take long. It's take like 5 minutes. And then said, yeah, my dad guilty of spying and this and that.
So they brought him out? Or?
Yeah, they brought him out, handcuffed. Stand at the box, he see me, well, it's only me there, right? He see me and I see him. well, we can't even talk to each other, right? Even if talk, I don't know what to talk, right? Who's there to talk about?
Yeah.
So we just look at each other, and then I remember it's just really quick, like 5 minutes, and they go out and they just this and that, and the lawyer said, well, I don't remember exactly what they said, but he's guilty of spying and go back to jail. I don't remember how many years they said, and then they took him back again. And then after that, I supposed to go to the police station to pick up the bike. And for me, I don't know what to do. I'm normal people. They don't go to police station unless there's something, right? So I walk to the police station. I know where's the police station. So I walk there, and I'm afraid. So I just stand outside across the street.
My dad told me that he was lingering outside of the police station for about 15 to 20 minutes, just pacing back and forth, unsure of what he was going to say, how he was going to say it, and of course, incredibly scared for what might happen.
I'm kind of thinking what I'm going to do now.
Like, how are you going to get the bike?
Yeah, how I'm going to get the bike, what I'm going to say, right? Okay. So I stand there quite some time. And then that used to be our friend, that guy. He come out. And then he waved me in. He said, come. He waved me in, and then he gave me the bike. So I have the bike. It's my dad's bike. It's big, and I'm short. That time I can ride bike, but not a normal way, because I'm not tall enough.
My grandpa's bike had a sort of road bike type frame with a long top tube right across the middle connecting the seat with the bottom of the handlebars. My dad, as a young boy, learned to weave half of his lower body awkwardly through the midsection of the bike, trying his best to balance while straddling the chains midair and pedaling off-kilter uncomfortably up and down.
So most of the time I push the bike home, and from the police station back to our house, if walking, it will take me 2.5 hours. But if adult ride bike, it's really fast. I remember it's a summer day, it's very, very hot. And my mom prepared a really big hat for me. I remember those big hats, it's like a really big
straw hat?
Yes, okay, so I can wear them and the sun won't burn me, right? So I remember that. I have to pass by a lot of town. I passed by Hongai. Hongai is the big town at that time. And I know the place pretty well because I walked to watch soccer well, and there is an ice cream shop there. Every time if we have money, we stop by and then buy a soft ice cream. And that day I was pushing the bike back to that area, that very close to the ice cream shop. And then I saw the prison bus, the bus that carries prisoner. They take the prisoner to the camp, right? And that bus is my dad. He's sitting at one of the windows.
So there was my dad, 12 years old and standing in the sweltering sun with a bike twice his size. A bus much like a rundown school bus with steel bars lining the windows, weighed down by dozens of prisoners, rolling past just a few feet in front of him. My grandpa, sitting right in the front seat with the window wide open, as the bus slowly rolls by, my dad and his father lock eyes. No words, no wave, just what felt like minutes of longing until broken by distance and begging the question, will I ever see you again?
Yeah, so the bus go by me really slowly, and I can see him and he can see me. Yeah, at that time we just look at each other's. It's crazy.
How did you feel back then? Like, were you?
Well, at that time, I don't know what to feel. Of course, you feel sad, but like it's just so surprised. Like you don't expect it.
Yeah.
Because the whole day has already been so sad already, right? Yeah. Sad and scary, and then now you see him up there, and then you know that boss gonna take him to prison. But well, this because I'm a little kid, and he's what can he say? What can I say, right? So yeah, we just look at each other's until the bus pass us. And then I start going back home. Some part I ride a bike a bit, and then I push the bike. I'm so little, I can't ride the bike up the hill or over this train track. Then I have to go down and then push again.
When my dad got home from his trip to the courthouse, nothing was said or discussed. It was already known that my grandpa wouldn't have any chance of being released, and seeing that my dad had brought back the bike was just confirmation of that. I think about my dad as a 12-year-old boy in that situation, and it really breaks my heart. Imagining the amount of complex information and emotions to process something like that at such a young age. The uncertainty, confusion, sadness, anger, and fear. And above all that, having been a big moment where my dad had no idea if or when he would ever see his dad again. Before I continue with the story, I'd like to take a small detour and tell you about a more recent moment I was and am so proud of my dad's growth and courage after all of these years. Up until the last year or so, this has been a memory and experience that my dad had held on to, bottled up, and hadn't discussed openly with really anybody except my mom. No siblings or other family members knew anything about this experience and how it had affected my dad. It was really clear that this moment held a lot of weight for him and was something that he thought about really often. So, last November, my yeye passed away. I knew that talking about this moment with my grandpa was something that my dad really wanted to do, so when yeye got sick, I was afraid that maybe my dad wouldn't have the opportunity to express these feelings to him that he had spent over 40 years keeping to himself. After he passed away, my dad told me that there was a day in the hospital when, although Yeye wasn't able to speak, he was coherent and alert. My dad got an opportunity with him to finally say and express everything that he had wanted to, and said that he could clearly see that my grandpa also remembered the moments at the courthouse and on the train. And I know that that meant so much to the both of them. My dad told me that he was incredibly emotional during this moment. Even the nurse in the room cried, and although my grandpa couldn't speak, my dad saw his eyes fill with tears as he tried to communicate. He made gestures to his mouth in a sort of lifting of the corners, which my dad interprets maybe as a way my grandpa was telling him, "It's okay, don't cry, be happy." I've seen over the last year how much opening up and expressing deep-seated emotions has helped my dad, and like he said in part 1, every time he does, it feels like more and more weight is lifted, making more space for joy, and I'm so proud of him and his progress, and so thankful that he has let me into some of his growth. Okay, so back to the story. After a few months of my dad's eldest brother being in prison, he was finally released. My grandfather, though, was still imprisoned at that time.
And then my brother got released from prison after about 3 months in prison. He finally got released. And as soon he got released from the prison, my mom sent him and my second brothers out of the country, because at that time a lot of Chinese people are leaving the country, either walking back to China or taking a boat to Hong Kong. Everybody wants to go to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But to be able to go to Hong Kong, you have to have money, right? At that time, they don't take money anymore. They take gold, 24 karat gold. And each people have to give quite a bit too. It's a lot of money compared with what you can make in a month. It might be worth a whole year's, right? So poor people, they can't go to Hong Kong. So a lot of people, they walk to China. Like two of my cousins. Yeah, they just left overnight.
That's a long time, days. Right?
Oh, a couple of weeks. And walk to the borders. At that time, Chinese government, they will welcome all Chinese. Okay, if you want to go back to China, they open arms, right? They said they will provide living and they help and stuff. But for us, we can't go because my dad's still in prison. But my mom sent my two older brothers go with my mom's sister family. So they went on a boat and go to Hong Kong. And that time, everybody wanted to go to Hong Kong, but the truth is, nobody knows if they can make it or not, right? But rumor said some people get to Hong Kong, but a lot of people die because after they left, there's no news, nothing. But for our family, we still stay because my dad's still in prison, and we asked them to release my fathers so we can leave the country, right? But they say no. And my mom said, well, if without him, we're not gonna go, right? And my dad told my mom that he's not gonna go back to China. And he asked us not to go back to China. If we go, we have to go to Hong Kong, he said, because he was born and raised in China and he knows how hard it is in China. Right? So my mom tried to get him out so we can either leave the country or stay back or whatever, you know. But yeah, my mom don't want to leave without my dad. So at one point, the government, they come to our house and said, okay, let's make a deal. And they agree to let my dad out, okay, if we leave the country. So that's what they said. So my mom said, okay, that's fine. I think my mom went to see my dad and talk to him about it. He know about it, so he agreed. So that's why we decided to leave. But it's not that easy. If you want to go, then you have to find a contact to find a boat. So my mom go and gather information, and finally we know a boat have room for us.
All right, so this is where I will end part 2. I hope you have enjoyed listening today. Stay tuned for part 3, where my dad talks about his experiences leaving his home behind, heading to the beaches and boats with his family in hopes of reaching Hong Kong, and find out if the Vietnamese government kept their end of the deal. See you soon. Bye. Music by Blue Wednesday. Be sure to check him out. He's amazing. And as always, Holding Heritage is created, produced, and geographically based on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of the Tsleil-Waututh and Comox nations of the Coast Salish peoples.